I keep reading.
6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God, and it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male or your female servant, or your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy.
All right, that's good. I want to ask, start off this question to you guys. Is there any one day that is holier than another?
No.
No? Does anyone disagree with that? You disagree with that? Okay, what? Why?
We'd have to maybe nuance holy a bit, but I think that when God does particular works in repeated times and in repeated locations, that those times and locations start to become more set apart than other times and locations.
Interesting. Okay, do you think the writers of the Heidelberg agree with that, based on the answer?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay. Anybody else that would agree with what Jesse's saying? And I think there's absolutely some things that are true in what he said. But
I think it depends on how you look at it.
yeah, I think there's some nuances that we
would
agree.
As a congregation to come together, but I think each day is as holy as the next as far as how we worship the Lord and turn, walking Him. But there is that day where we come together as a community.
Yeah. I want to read the... Go ahead.
Can I go?
Yeah.
See, the thing is you have to be careful when you ask or answer that, because with the Jews it's the Sabbath, and with us it's Sunday. So, why?
Okay, and I think ultimately that's the question the writers of the Heidelberg and the Helvetics, which is contemporary to the Heidelbergs, and Westminster, who are contemporaries of each other, all writing confessions, are trying to answer. What is the Sabbath? Is it a day? Is it a person? Is it something future? Is it something now? Is it something in the past?
Yes.
And I think of, the verse, be holy as I am holy. Say be holy on Sunday.
Right. Okay. So I think we're getting at kind of what the Heidelberg writers are saying here. In the answer, I want to read the answer again, right? So here's the question. What is God's will for you, right? They're not talking, this isn't a general commandment, right, to the world or to the nation of Israel. This is to you as the nation of Israel, right? What is God's will for you in the fourth commandment? And so that the gospel ministry and education for it be maintained, right? So being in the Sabbath according...
Sunday school.
Sure, yeah. Gospel ministry, right? And we looked at in Ephesians, right? What are the apostles, teachers, prophets, what are they equipping the saints for? Ministry, right? And good works. That's part of the ministry. Being equipped for ministry. So part of what the Sabbath does for us in keeping it is maintaining gospel ministry. So that means the gospel is being spoken to us all the time. It's being taught to us continually. It's not being just taught to us on a Sunday. It's not just being taught to us on a Tuesday or a Friday, or right. It's actually being taught to us, especially as families, every night when we do family worship. This is part of living in the Sabbath. Okay, and
Are you this church? Are you Sabbatarians?
So that's a nuanced question. Everyone here should say, yes, we're Sabbatarians. The question, again, would be what we've kind of heard said sporadically. What does that mean?
It's what I've been taught or learned in past accurate in your estimation, that is, that the Sabbath day technically is a different day with a different meaning, but there are certain principles that carry over for us on our day of worship Sunday, correct?
Well, so this is what we're going to talk about. So we'll get to what ultimately I think the Heidelberg writers are saying, and ultimately my position as well. But I can say just flat out, no, we're not transitioning from a Sabbath day that the Jews observed to a new Christian Sabbath day. And we'll get into a little bit why I don't hold to that, and I don't think any of the elders do. And what it actually is the Sabbath, as far as what is the nation now in Christ? How are we at rest? Because ultimately, when we'll get into what that means. But I want you to pay attention to the language that's not being used in the answer on purpose. So far we have an action. An action. This sounds like work a little bit, right? The gospel ministry is work. Ministry is hard. Ministry is exhausting, right? And education, for it be maintained, and that especially on the festive day of rest. I know we're talking about the festive day. I diligently attend the assembly of God's people. Now they're talking about the day in which the people of God gathered to worship, right? So there's one aspect of being in God's rest, being in the Sabbath. To learn what God's word teaches. All right, there's another action. Here's another work that we're doing in rest, in the Sabbath. To participate in the sacraments. To pray to God publicly. To bring Christian offerings for the poor. Wow, so we see a lot of actions being commanded here and how we obey this commandment. And of course, I hope we're all thinking of Christ on the Sabbath and the works that he's doing, healing people, right? The Pharisees are like, you can't heal on the Sabbath. What are you doing? And Christ is like, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. I tell you what to do. I made the Sabbath for you. Anyway, to bring Christian offerings to the poor. Second, all right. So that kind of falls in line. All those things that we do on a Sunday, typically, right? Second, that every day of my life. Now we're talking about something that goes beyond a day, beyond just one religious day that we're going to stop working, or however we define that. That every day of my life, I rest from my evil ways. Right? Here's the mortification of sin. This is us working again every day to kill sin and to rest from my evil ways. Let the Lord work in me through his Spirit. Right? Here, now we're talking about sanctification. And so begin in this life the eternal Sabbath. Now we have already not yet language being introduced here. So there's something different that the Heidelberg writers are saying here, how we should understand this fourth commandment. There's something that we're doing now. It sounds like we're in rest now, and not just on a day, but as it says, that every day of my life, we're doing something in rest, and God's rest somehow. But then, also, there's an eternal Sabbath that we're anticipating, that we're waiting for. So there's different facets as far as the Heidelberg writers are concerned with regards to the Sabbath day. So I think right off the bat, I think the answer itself to the fourth commandment, it's clear that we don't just cease from all labor. Right? The commandment's not telling us we should pick 6 days in which we labor, and then on the final one we should be like Chick-fil-A. All of us should be Chick-fil-A, where we sell, and then Sunday, we make the joke, hey, I'll meet you at Chick-fil-A on Sunday, you're buying, or something like that, right? Where you just cease from work. That is not what the fourth commandment is asking us to do. We do see an aspect in Christ where, and Paul's going to get into this a little bit in Galatians when he's exhorting the Ephesians or the Galatians in this new gospel they've heard from the Judaizers. But for Christ, one day is not holier than the other in his church. And we actually have seen circumstances in the church where certain days have been argued, like, hey, we should celebrate Easter on this day because this is when Christ was crucified, and this was when he was resurrected, and that makes the day holy, so we should only celebrate Easter on the 14th of April. This was an actually real debate in the church early on, and it was called Quattro Destinism, and it's just Latin for quattro, 10, 14. Quattro is 4, decimus and 10. So their argument was you have to celebrate Easter on the 14th, right? And then the others were saying, well, no, we should actually celebrate it on the Lord's Day when we meet, and it could be on the 14th sometimes, but we should do it on the Sunday nearest the 14th. And so there's a big debate, right? And at the end of the day, the church was like, look, there's that the 14th isn't holy in itself. It's not a holy day. Look what Paul says. You shouldn't count, we shouldn't be holding each other up to these random holy days, these superstitions, whatever, right? We don't need to do that. So the church was like, okay, in the end, they're like, okay, we don't need to do that. And that's why you see Easter change on different days now in the West. But the point in Christ is, no, there's not a day that is holier than another. And if someone can open Galatians for me. Galatians chapter 4. And while you're opening to that, this idea was also supported by Calvin, many of the early reformers, in regards to how they looked at the Sabbath, the fourth commandment.
Galatians 4.
Yeah, Galatians 4. 4:10, starting verse 10.
Okay. You observe days and months and seasons and years. I am afraid I may have labored over you in vain. Brothers, I entreat you, become as I am, for I also have become as you are.
That's good. All right, so we see those in Galatia that they're actually holding certain days as holy, probably as the Judaizers are influencing them. Paul's saying, look, don't do that. You guys are leaving the gospel, going somewhere else. You're attaching the gospel to specific days. Not only that, but to actions like circumcision. There's a lot going on. And Paul's saying that has to stop. That is not the gospel. You've been called to something else. You've been called to Jesus Christ, and that is your rest. Christ is now your rest. And a lot of the early reformers agreed with this understanding of the Sabbath. And when we read the Heidelberg Catechism, that's true. I want to also read the Helvetic. Give me the. I want to read the Helvetic Confession when it talks about how they view the Sabbath as well. Okay, so Helvetic was a contemporary confession to the Heidelberg, right? So here's how it reads, talking about the Sabbath. Although religion be not tied unto time, yet can it not be planted and exercised without a due dividing of allotting out of time? Okay, this is saying, right, we don't put any holy, there's no day that is holier than the next. However, in time, as temporal human beings, we have to decide to do things on certain days, right? And there's nothing wrong, and actually there's something glorious and beautiful in saying we are going to worship on the Lord's day, on Sunday. We're going to follow the tradition of the church, and we're going to worship on the Lord's day. Now, again, I've said this before, but let's say for whatever reason that could not happen, and let's say we worship on a Wednesday. Is God meeting us any less on a Wednesday if we were to worship together than if we were to do it on a Sunday? No, absolutely not. The Lord would meet us in the same way. He's still calling us to Zion. And just because we do it on the Lord's Day, which is the best picture of what we're doing, doesn't mean that day's more holier than another. Yep.
So that's in the context of the church meeting together.
Yeah.
The called out church.
Yeah.
Because this is Las Vegas, and how many times have I heard people say, well, I just do church on Saturday, or in fact, we have a lot of churches that do that to accommodate casino workers and such. Individually, do you think that holds? Or you guys?
What do you mean individually?
Well, just that people think they can do church by themselves, or whatever, that they can't come on Sunday, so they.
That-
I guess I'm.
That's probably a different category. Now we're talking someone that's
Making up new rules.
yeah, that's not fellowshipping with the body as Hebrews would.
So even the churches that meet on Saturday, no problem.
Churches that meet on Saturday, no problem. Actually, and you've heard this before, the traditional Sabbath was from sundown to sundown, right? So sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. The actual if it was a new Christian Sabbath, we're talking sundown on Saturday into sundown, right? So if you have a church that's a service that's after sundown, you're technically outside the realm of the new Christian Sabbath.
Can I key on what Tony's saying?
Sure.
I think I understand. Well,
I don't even think I understood myself.
there's so I think there's this movement in like some larger mega churches around, because I know some of the people who do this, and they're like, look, we have services not only on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Saturday night. Like if you want to go vacation on Sunday morning, just come to the Saturday night one.
Sure.
Or we have one Friday night. They're all the same service, so it's just come like whenever. Like so plan out your weekend, and then wherever you can fit church in, come in.
So now you're also breaking up the body into segments. So now you have a bunch of different churches as opposed to one unified church.
Well, let's say this is the other. So we'll get to this because this is the other side of the ditch, right? And since Tony and Jesse brought it up, what?
The other side of the ditch, it's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, there's one side of the ditch, right? So here's the other side. Because we say not any one day is holier than the next, we cannot then say that there is no holy day. Right? So if we're going to treat the church irreverently in such a way and use it and say, hey, I know you guys have a lot of wants and needs, so we're going to accommodate to you. Now you've made it you're not just saying every day is holy. Now you've made it common, and that's the other side of the ditch, right? That is something that the church would need to repent of, and that we would need to repent of if we were like, yeah, I like that church because they accommodate to me. So to say we're not going to treat any particular day as holier than the next, we cannot then conclude that every day is not holy and just treat it as common. For the Christian, every day is holy, and we should treat the church in any way we meet as the foundation of our lives, the epicenter and the climax of our week, of our year, of our time. So we should never be saying, well, I'm going to go on vacation on Sunday because I know a church that meets on Wednesday. Well, now you're saying, well, Sunday's common, and Wednesday I'll make. So you're actually doing what Scripture's saying not to do. You're actually going to say, I'll make Wednesday holy, and I'll say Sunday's not.
You're judging them. They can have whatever day they want.
Yeah, whatever day right, and I think that's good. That's scriptural judgment on them, I would say. But okay, so let me continue with, because that was only the first sentence of the Helvetic, right? So it's making a distinction. This might be the whole. I don't mind. We might spend the whole time on this and not even get to confession. I'm fine with that. Although religion be not tied unto time, okay, yet can it not be planted and exercised without a due dividing and allotment out of time. Every church, therefore, does choose unto itself a certain time for public prayers and for the preaching of the gospel and for the celebration of the sacraments. And it is not lawful for anyone to overthrow this appointment of the church at its own pleasure. And I totally, absolutely conform to this answer to the question here. But again, this I don't think they're even thinking about the scenario that we brought up. This is a democratic American idea, right? This would not have entered their minds. Like, oh, we can just do what we want and church service whenever.
It's the ecclesia, the called out assembly.
It's the called out ones, right? They might actually accuse Rome of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say, yeah, well, you guys make Saturday the holiest day, and if you don't go there, you're actually out of grace now. So they'll put that mantle on Rome. Oh yeah.
Given the fact that we're meeting corporately on Sunday,
Yeah.
and by doing so, setting that day apart for corporate worship,
Yeah.
fellowship with God's people, which distinguishes it from other days. If you're not going to call it a more holy day, then how would you classify it?
Well, we're classifying it. This is the day that the Lord's going to meet us. So it is a holy day. We're not going to say it's not a holy day.
Right.
But does that day? I mean, for us, is it more set apart than other days? Well, of course it is. Yes.
With respect to those forementioned things.
Right, but the day in itself does not become more holy. Does that make sense? So we're being more set apart in our daily, weekly routine. So in that sense, yeah, we're looking more set apart as the church, as the world sees us all gathering and going, what are they doing? And seeing us love each other, seeing us take care of the poor, right? This is where the world sees the holiness of the church, but that doesn't automatically make that day somehow more holy.
So how does this play in with, how does this play in with your sermon on Saturday, where you're talking about, church isn't just you come on Sunday and then you leave and you never see anyone.
Yeah.
So obviously we're all getting together throughout the week for Bible studies and fellowship
Yeah.
or serving one another. So how does that play in with the holiness of a particular Sunday versus the rest of the week?
Right, so I think a balanced view of understanding that there is no particular holy day would actually help us understand why we need to be with the church throughout the week as well. We're not saying, yeah, I can actually go on Sunday and get everything I need because that's the holiest day, and there's enough holiness on Sunday to get me to the next Sunday. Right? Like now we're going back to Roman theology. There's a treasury of holiness merit that that's in this treasure box, and then I dig it out, and it's metaphysical, and it applies to me, and then I can be absent, and then just regenerate and replenish my holiness bank account.
There's
There
also
is
through
a
communion too.
holiness or something more that's happening on Sunday through the sacraments.
Yeah, right, and the confession actually gets to that when it's saying, every church therefore does choose unto itself a time for public prayers and for the preaching of the gospel and for the celebration of the sacraments. So again, this is making the concession that while we're not saying any day is more holy than the other, as creatures in time, we have to set apart times and days to do what is holy.
So do you think it would be more appropriate then, instead of referring to Sunday as a more holy day, that certainly the pursuits are set apart as more holy versus what we do throughout the week? Or are you going to say that no matter what we do throughout the week, we're going to be seeking to honor God in all things, so they're all the same, basically?
Well, yeah, so I think in what we do temporally, we're going to look different. It's going to be holy in the sense that we're set apart in a different way, that God's meeting us in a different way. But my point is saying Sunday doesn't have to be that day.
So it will probably be more, it's the difference between the day and the occasion and the event. The day, the date, or the day of the week is not what makes it holy, but the occasion or what we're meaning, that is
Right.
we could classify it as a holier event than
Yeah.
engaging in
Sure.
personal worship.
Well, like they did in Heidelberg, they called it the festive day.
Festive day,
So
yeah.
it's a different day. It's a little bit different.
Right. They do assign a day,
We
but
do communion on that day.
right. But if we took communion again, yeah. So the action is what makes it holy. If we did communion on a Wednesday, the means of grace, the Spirit is working as much through that on a Wednesday than on a Sunday.
I think saying a day, we all view Sunday as being a little bit more holy.
But not because it's
But
Sunday.
Not because it's Sunday, but because of what we're gathering
but most people think because it's Sunday. The Westminster. We'll read the Westminster here in a second. That's what the Westminster will say. So this is, and maybe just because in our church we've been taught pretty well on this angle, but for the majority of Christians, there will be a emphasis on Sunday for the day itself.
Because they call it the Lord's.
Because they call it the Lord's Day. Yeah.
I think one thing that goes unnoticed sometimes in this conversation is, it'll be like, the trope might be thrown out, well, we could just choose any other day and make that holy. And we could do all the things we did on Sunday because there's nothing about the day. But it is also interesting to think about how the universal church is all meeting on Sunday. So if we as Trinity Reformed Church in Las Vegas were to just be like, hey, let's do Thursdays, we would be breaking, in a sense, from all the other Christians around the world who are worshiping on Sundays.
So again, we're talking two different categories here. So we're talking in one sense, well, how do we as creatures act in time in the reality that no day in itself is holier than the next? Well, we're going to meet when the church meets. So if we're just going to flippantly say, we're not going to meet on Sunday because, now we're saying, we're lessening the days and saying Sunday doesn't matter at all. Now Wednesday is going to be the day that matters. But if for whatever reason we couldn't meet on a Sunday, not because we were flippantly saying, let's just change the day, and we worship on a Wednesday, there'd be nothing wrong with that.
Since we were slaves or something.
Because if we were slaves or, whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
But could you say then it's not the day that is holy, but it's how we invest our time where our relationship with God.
Well, every day is holy is the point. Every day is holy.
Every day is holy.
Yeah.
But what
In
sets-
Christ.
But what sets a day apart is how whether we're obeying God in the context
Yes.
of the day.
Sure. Yep. All right. So it's okay. For except some due time. Let me read that prior sentence. Just get the context again. Every church, therefore, does choose unto itself a certain time for public prayers and for the preaching of the gospel and for the celebration of the sacraments, and it is not lawful for anyone to overthrow this appointment of the church at its own pleasure. For except some due time and leisure were allotted to the outward exercise of religion, without doubt men would be quite drawn from it by their own affairs. So it's saying, like, if we don't actually pick a day, men are just going to do what they want, right? And that's our tendency is to go back to being our own masters, right? In regard hereof, we see that in the ancient churches, now here again, this is where tradition matters. Ancient churches, there were not only certain set hours in the week appointed for meetings, but that also the Lord's Day itself, ever since the apostles' time, was consecrated to religious exercises and to a holy rest, which also is now very well observed by our churches, for the worship of God and the increase of charity. Yet herein we give no place unto the Jewish observation of the day. This is what we're trying to divide here, right? And again, that's why the tradition aspect of worshiping on the day the church did, it's good. We should do that. We need to pick a day. Yet herein we give no place unto the Jewish observation of the day, or to any superstitions, for we do not account one day to be holier than another. Right? So there's the idea of not one day is holier. Nor think that mere rest is of itself acceptable to God. So this is where we tend to get it wrong as Christians, as all of us being Sabbatarians. We tend to think, I need a rest from all work, and my idleness is holiness, right? And of course, that is absolutely incorrect, right? There is no holiness in idleness. There's holiness and righteous activity. And we'll get to the definition between activity and work a little bit later. Besides, we do celebrate and keep the Lord's Day and not the Jewish Sabbath, and that with a free observation. So we see the echoing of the Helvetic and the Heidelberg Confession here and what Paul was saying in Galatians 4. He's talking about two different days, right? He's talking to the Galatians. He's saying, you guys have chosen specific days, not to just worship like the Helvetic's talking about, but you've actually said, no, these days are more holier. Therefore, we must and we have to do these specific things on these days, and we must adhere to these rituals on this certain day for it to be effective. And Paul is saying, no, that's not how it works. There is a time where you're going to pick and choose the days you're going to minister to one another, the sacraments, whatnot. But you cannot bind anyone's conscience and say this day is more holier than the other, and you must do this on this day. And if you don't, right? This is the leaven of the Pharisees. This is getting around God's law. This is saying, well, if you do this restrictive thing, you've fulfilled the entire law, right? Because fulfilling the entire law is too difficult. So if I give you this one narrow thing to do, then you've actually done what you're supposed to do. Paul's like, well, no, it doesn't work like that. So we're not to bind anyone's conscience to any religious day. And I think this was good to bring up because this church is going more towards the church calendar in regards to how we're going to organize our worship. Okay? So this is why it's really good to understand the different categories here. Our church is going to hold to this Helvetic understanding and the Heidelberg understanding of holy days. However, we see the value in doing what the church has done over time in teaching the whole counsel of God, right? This goes back to the Sermon Sunday. It is the job of the elders and the apostles to teach the entire counsel, Old, New Testaments, prophets, and apostles. And we could, reinvent the wheel if we wanted to. There's nothing wrong with that. There's some churches do that, and they do a very good job at that. But we don't have to. The church is actually set even in the year, a liturgical way to preach the whole Word of God. So you saw a lot of people had issues with the Maundy Thursday we did for Easter. You guys remember that? It was a weird service, right? Who agrees it was weird? Raise your hand. Yeah, weird. It was weird because none of us had ever seen it before, right? Now, if we were to come out and say, if you don't celebrate Maundy Thursday, you're in sin. Right? Now we're going into Galatians territory. Right? Now we're actually binding consciences and to say, if there's a year that we weren't able to do a Maundy Thursday, now we're in sin. Now we've gone somewhere the gospel doesn't take us.
Excuse me, on what Thursday?
Maundy Thursday.
Monument?
Yeah, it's preparing for the triumphal entry. And then the betrayal of Christ, right? It's actually getting you focused on different aspects of the passion, right? So Maundy Thursday is one of those services that focus the body and to really looking into a specific aspect of the gospel, right? Everyone does this on Christmas, but we just don't think about it because it's not just a church norm, it's a culture norm, right? Church norms are really weird for us because the culture hates it and is like, no. But sometimes the culture will go along with it, and it's much easier to do those things, right? We don't really think about those things as much. But even if we didn't do a Christmas Eve service, right? Are we saying like Christmas Eve is a holy day? That we should have a Christmas Eve? Some people think that. Some people think if I don't go to a Christmas Eve service, then I'm going to be cursed on Christmas morning when I open my presents or whatever. But that's what we're trying to avoid. So there's a balance here, right? And this church strikes the balance, and it's not a balance that we've manufactured. It's a balance that's taught in Scripture. We are going to set these days to do these things, and God's going to meet us here, and He's going to minister to us, and He's going to sanctify us. But those days in themselves don't matter.
So Drake?
Yeah.
If you do this church calendar thing, is that like are you trying to cover the whole Bible in a year, or you do like
there's different themes.
Ascension and
Yeah.
Easter and
It's really thematic, right? So, like, if I think about the Incarnation, is that saying, well, the Incarnation just happened in the New Testament, so I guess I can't use the Old? Well, no, we'll see on Sunday, right, when we look at our historic redemptive liturgy, that in fact, right, the Incarnation is everywhere in the Old Testament. So it is taking themes and saying, use the counsel of God here to teach this. Use the counsel of God to teach the Incarnation. Use the whole counsel of God to teach the Ascension. Use the whole counsel of God to teach the Passion of Christ. And then we're going to be bathed in it, right? Now, if I were just to say, let's focus on the birth of Jesus, well, then we are really just in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the only Old Testament we get are any of the prophets quoting something. So it's just more intentional, I guess. So it's not like through the calendar year we'll go through Genesis through Revelation, but we will be going through Genesis through Revelation as we're focusing on different themes.
yeah, my church up there does all that stuff. It's like really weird.
Yeah, and that's the point. I think it's wise to do. I think it really helps. It helps the man. Okay. Shepherding is difficult, right? I mean, and this is a small church, but if the Lord blesses us with more people, we're going to get busy, right? And our sole occupation is praying and learning the Word. But if we have to think about something else, like, oh, okay, I got to build a calendar, because we're either doing two things: building our own calendar, or we're just being impulsive, or we're just going, okay, our church is struggling with this, so I'm going to preach on this, which is actually good, but you can do it in the realm of a church calendar too. It helps the elders plan out what to feed you and when. If you drink a whole gallon of milk in like under an hour, I think your body can't do it, right? It just barfs it up, right? Like, does anyone try that? No.
It's an army thing.
It's not a real thing.
It's an army.
I could.
It's an army thing. Yeah.
They call me the Dairy Queen. I could do it.
They call you. That's hilarious. The point being, like, if we just kept giving you milk, you're like, I can't stomach any more milk. Give me something. I need water too. I need bell peppers and zucchini. So how can we give you all the food groups on a plate? And the church calendar helps us do that, and not having to think about. And now we got to think about how to apply this to you, right? Because every church has its own issues, right? We talked about our issues on Sunday, and we'll talk about our issues more on next Sunday. But it'll be in the realm of this calendar, liturgical calendar.
Everyone's going to have holy days, holidays. It's either going to be Thanksgiving, 4th of July, MLK Day, and Juneteenth. Or it's going to be, Christmas, Ascension, Pentecost, Maundy, Thursday, things like that. There's no neutral place where all days are equal. Everyone acknowledges special days, where you do different things. And if you try to take a secular route and say, I'm not going to practice anything of religious significance on any days, then you're just going to be conformed to culture.
Right.
You're
Again.
not going to see their holy days.
Yeah. So again, I would say that's a misunderstanding of how God is teaching us about time. So again, we're not going to say, yeah, everyone has holidays, holy days, but it's not the days or anything like that make it holy. We have to celebrate these things on a day, and we can't bind anyone to say you have to celebrate Christmas. We're not going to bind anyone to that. I think it's good. I think it helps us understand the Incarnation, but we never bind anyone to that. But we would bind you to the church service, right? That's binding. And if you start forsaking the assembly, we're going to come. This sounds really harsh. We're going to come after you in a loving way. We're not going to break your kneecaps, right? Because that's holy. Assembling is holy. Assembling on Sunday, because it's Sunday, is not holy. He's not visible. Could someone open to Romans 14? Starting in verse 5, whoever's there.
One person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God. While the one who abstains in honor of the Lord, and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's.
That's good. That's good. That's good, Elizabeth. So here's the other side of it, right? When we do a Maundy Thursday, it's fine. That's a good sign to sing. Time to go to sleep. Bless the Lord. So, because I think there's a lot of people when I talked about Maundy Thursday, saying there's nothing in Maundy Thursday itself that makes it special or whatever. Some people say, "Good, yeah. I don't want to go to Maundy Thursday anyway." So thanks, Drake, for telling me that there's nothing specifically special about it. Make no mistake, if we decide to gather that day, we will be ministered to by the Lord. We will be. When we gather Christmas Eve, we will be ministered to by the Lord, especially if we are doing the sacraments. And I think didn't we do communion this last Christmas Eve? Didn't we do that? I think we did. Yeah. Like the Lord is meeting us there. The means of grace are active, right? And I think, and that's what Paul's getting at. Like, don't think because what I said that if we didn't do a Maundy Thursday, we're not sinning. Therefore, you can say, well, I'm going to forsake that because it's not required. Like, no, there's a huge benefit of the body gathering there. And if the elders have said, hey, we're going to gather here on this day, we should be there.
Please.
Well, it kind of goes with the fact that we say we're having a Maundy Thursday service. But, so there's two caveats to that, right? We are going to meet and we are going to be ministered to by the Lord. But again, if we decided not to have one that year, it'd be different than saying, like, we're not going to meet at all this week because, I don't know, Drake really wants to go to Top Golf and Jeff wants to go camping. That's just all the things I can think of right now. Right? So there's differences to that. So I don't want to... there's no giving excuses to anyone to say, it's not required, so therefore I won't be there. Remember, you have, as members of the body, and we'll talk about this on Sunday, you have been put under the authority of a local body, right? So you're actually saying, elders, lead me. Elders, tell me what I need to know. Tell me how I need to live by what Scripture says. And if that means for me to come on a Maundy Thursday to focus on this aspect of Christ's life, I will do that, right? That's what we're saying. I think that's what Paul is saying in Romans 14 as well. Any?
That's good. I'm convicted. I'm at church up there. They do things. They have a fellowship picnic, and all the other weeks they have picnics too. But they say on the fellowship picnic, you kind of need to try to be there.
Yeah.
The other ones, if you want to be there, you can.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, whatever. And then they do a lot of these different dates, and I'm like, well, Sunday's the day, so I go on Sunday. Maybe I'll go for the candlelight service or whatever. But I should be, with the churches meeting together to do these things, I should make it more of a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay. A few more minutes. All right, here's a softball easy question. Who was the Lord, or who was the Sabbath made for?
Man.
Okay. And who's the Lord of Sabbath? Who? Jesus. Yeah, right. Correct. Jesus says, "I am the Lord of the Sabbath." Right. Keeping of the Sabbath is not just, but it is highly spiritual in the sense that it rests in Christ, and we wait for an eternal Sabbath. Christ is the Lord of the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for us, right? The Incarnation was for us. Christ is the eternal Sabbath. Therefore, we rest in him, right? So the Sabbath has gone from a civil, national ordinance to reflect and show a nation's reliance on God's rest, right? To a man, a God-man, who fully took on flesh and was like us in every way except without sin, and then died so that we can be in that rest, right? That's the purchase of something eternal. So the already is we are in Christ, in him, so we're in rest, waiting for an eternal rest, which is what really, if the Sabbath were like a map, and Israel was rolled up, and in Christ it's sprawled out, right, on the table. And now it takes up a lot more space. And it takes a lot more space in our lives, right? The fact that we're in Christ in the eternal Sabbath is the whole reason why we're always resting together. Like right now, we're actually obeying the Sabbath right now. As we've gathered, we're all resting, right? Like this, isn't this calming? Isn't this like refreshing to you guys? Isn't this like water on a hot day, right? This is the spring in the desert. This is being in his rest right now. And when if we don't see it that way, if we just see the Sabbath as a day because it's in the Ten Commandments, and Scripture is very clear that not one jot or tittle of the law will pass away, right? So we have to adhere to the Sabbath in that way or else. Well, then you only have people that come to church on Sundays. I think that there's a lot. I don't know if anyone is on Twitter or knows what's going on with the Baptist versus Presbyterian thing. Does anyone? Okay, I won't go there then.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Wait, was it the controversy sparked by the cross-politic?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
Tell us now.
Okay. So there's a comment made that Baptist theology, if you take it to its secular conclusion, leads to like transgenderism, individuality. Really, it's focusing on individuality, right? It caused a huge storm, right? What I'm saying is, if we see the Sabbath as just a day, something that is ritualistic and that I have to rest like this, then we're actually going to miss the whole point of it. And we may just be those who just show up on Sunday and that's it. Because we don't see the Sabbath as our entire lives. Because we're always in Christ. That means we're always obeying the Sabbath, right? And if Christ says, obey my commandments and live, then obeying his commandments is living in the Sabbath. And then doing what we're doing here is obeying Christ. If we see it like that, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, no, finish it.
I say if we see it like that, I guarantee you, all of us will all of a sudden become much more obedient to Christ's words.
I just wanted to add something too,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
For the moms here who are homeschooling their kids, this was a big thing for me. As I was homeschooling, the idea of resting in him as a mother, teaching my kids, I'm sure Allison, and anyone else, we don't have the ability in us, but you can rest in him, and he will give you everything, and they will learn everything they need to know, so to rest in him as you parent your children.
We also see the Sabbath as abstaining from like earthly or material things, right? We want to rest from our work, anyone that works for us, any kind of really like material things, right? We hyper spiritualize and say, well, I'll only have pleasure in the ethereal and not the material on the Sabbath, which is ironic because the Sabbath should actually make us more joyful of the material things that we've been given, right? This directly leads into how we actually take care of each other. So when we understand that the Sabbath should actually heighten our thanks for what is materially given to us, then we start giving our material stuff to each other. Right? Because we're like, oh, we're resting together. God has given us these things. And oh, by the way, like the Heidelberg question said, we should be taking care of the poor on the Sabbath. Those material things should be given out to all of us, each other. That is why the fellowship meals are the way they are. That is why we're bringing food. And this is something I hope we think about. We have poor families among us. We should not be asking the poor families to bring food on fellowship meals. We shouldn't be.
Really what that looks like then is us bringing more than we would need to feed our family.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Right. This is how
Do
we.
the elders tell them that, or how do they know?
Yeah. Well, I
They
think.
should be told somehow not to.
Right. Well, I think we're told really by our getting to know each other, because remember fellowships were like everyone knew each other, and a lot of us are scared to talk about like our economic situation, our job. This is just our culture. We're very distant. Well, I'll let you in a little bit, but man, if you start talking about my money, I'm not talking to you about that. It's too personal. Like that should be gone. We should be free to say, I've been struggling this month. Gas is crazy, and I can barely even get to church because the gas is too expensive. Right? We should never be ashamed to bring that to the front. That is, if there's sin, like I just don't like to work, and now you're not saying it because you're ashamed of your sin. That's different. But we're talking about for whatever circumstances brought a lack of resources. That needs to be communicated, and we'll know by fellowship with each other. It can't be the elder's job to like figure out all the poor people and then like send an email out. Here's all the poor people.
No, but sometimes when there are people struggling, they will come to you guys.
Well, the deacons, they come to the deacons.
Yes, and I have repeatedly said,
Yeah.
why isn't that presented to the church when there are those situations? Because unless they tell you, you're not going to know.
Right.
So, but I've not ever once heard it be presented.
Well, think about this. Think of like when you look at the law and it says when you harvest your vineyard, right? Don't take the olives at the top, right? Leave the olives. Anything you can't reach, leave. And when the vineyard, any grapes, right? Anything doesn't when you shake it.
That's right. All of that is right.
But you know where I'm going with that?
Many of us don't know.
Well, that's my point. My point is when the poor person was gleaning from the field, they might not know exactly who that person was every time. So we may not know who it is every time, but again, if we're bringing more than what just feeds our family, they'll be gleaning off what we bring.
About the days we fellowship. I'm
Sure.
you've had people come to you and say, hey, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or, I need this, or whatever. Those things aren't announced from the pulpit, so sometimes we don't know. And it would be nice if it was presented. We have a family in our church right now. Can you guys give extra, or this is what's going on? It would be nice to know. I mean, I've had a few private situations that have come before me that I've helped.
Right.
But I know there's more. It's like, where? So when I've talked to like Brent and stuff, I said, you guys should announce those things so that we can do more. But they're not announced.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that also factors in like when you guys are giving to the church, you guys are trusting the deacons and the elders to disseminate those funds to the poor as required.
So if you guys think that that's enough, then you won't make it.
That's right.
But if you need more, you'll tell us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we do a good job to say, hey, we need more. Or to say, like, if we want to allow somebody to minister to another Christian a certain way, we'll say, hey, this person has this need. I know you're gifted in this area, materially or whatever. Like, do you want to give to this person for that? Absolutely, I'd love to do that. But generally, like, the gleaning, again, happens when you guys are giving. We're going to talk about this Sunday as well. When you guys are giving to the church, you guys are ministering to the poor, right? We're giving money to the poor. Traditionally, in the first century, that was actually done right in front of you. Like the poor would come up and you see the money. We just don't live in that age anymore where that's happening. But yeah, circling back to the point. If that is an action we do resting, right? We don't just attach tithing as like, oh, I gave my 10%, I'm good, right? We attach it to this is how I obey Christ as a rest in Christ, as He is my Sabbath. And I think it makes us joyful givers, right? And then it makes us better with our money, obeying Christ. We're going to stop there. Next week, I think we should finish this. What do you guys think? Is that okay? I'm going to put a bookmark in doing the confession of liturgy. We only got a little bit left, but this is a really good question. I want to just focus on this a little bit more. Well, okay, I'll stop there. Any more questions on that? Comments? Further insights?
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
You know, a long time ago, I was very, very poor. And friends spoke out on my behalf and just said, hey, announce, so let the people know that don't have the means not to worry about it. And what Jesse said is right. What they do that in this church I go to now. If you have 10 kids, you bring enough for your whole family, plus a little extra.
Yeah.
And then you can say, if you don't have, or you're visiting, don't worry, come anyway. You know, it'll all work out. But I think people are ashamed, and they might feel a burden to
Yeah.
have to prepare a big pot of food, and they really can't afford it.
That's right.
And if you say, look, if you feel like this is exceeding your weekly budget, don't just come.
That's right.
We'll have extra.
Yep.
But that was beneficial to me. And I do hear you guys say that all the time when we have it. If you don't have anything, don't worry about it. Come with plenty.
Yeah, we're trying to get that mindset, but again, like the culture is ingrained us so hard to just be so emotional and hide those kind of issues. We'll say that, and people will still try to do things that they can't do, and we're like, stop. Or they won't ask. They'll be too ashamed to even ask for gas money, and then they're not showing up to things. We're like, where are you? Like, oh, I can't afford the gas. Like, well, tell us that. We want to help you. You're actually limiting. Again, this is the gospel being played out as we interact with each other. You're actually limiting my ability to be Christ to you, right? To love you like Christ loves me and loves you.
You're depriving us of having a blessing of helping you.
Right. And the thing about it too, like the poor aren't called to tithe. Like if they can't afford giving to the temple or giving to the church, right? It is those who are able to taking care of those who cannot. So a lot of churches see this, are messed up in this idea. Everyone should be getting 10% of whatever income they have, and that's not true. There's going to be a few, or a hand, I don't know. I'll just say a few, but a few taking care of probably many others. And you take care of your elders that way too, because remember, elders are all poor, except for me.
I mean, you did read about that.
'Cause I have another job.
Last week, who was upset with his congregation because they didn't buy him a Rolex watch. You heard that, didn't you?
Oh, really? Yeah.
She handed him his papers.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Remember, Paul equivocates elders with oxen. That's how poor they are.
Goodbye, knockout blower.
Yeah. But elders actually are grouped into that. Like they are poor because they would not be able to live without you supporting them. And Paul says that all the time. Like, I could have demanded money from you, right? I had the right to as an apostle, but I didn't for the sake of unity, right? And by the way, and this is no pat on my back, but I don't take a salary from the church, and I could. I mean, that would be completely within my right to do as an elder. But for the sake of unity and not being a stumbling block and for the survival of the church, so we can maintain the funds that we have and pay those who are poor among us. And I may, if I lose my job, I'll be among those poor as well. But all I have to say that should be understood in the context of Sabbath, which is, I don't know if you've connected those two before.
I've been in churches before where on Palm Sunday the food consistently runs out, but it's not because it's actually the poor people who are bringing the most food, and the rich people are actually just coming expecting to be served.
Sure.
And I mean, Christ had some really harsh words for the religious leaders when he observed that happening with the widow casting in the last of her, they shouldn't then get her. And so
That's going to be our sermon text on Sunday, by the way.
yeah, awesome. So and that comes to the festival rest.
Yeah.
There is a feast, and the feast is propagated by those who have been blessed the most.
Yeah, that's right.
What you have been given.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else? All right, Jesse, will you close us in prayer?
Lord, we thank you for the times that you call us together and give us the great gift of rest in you, rest in your Son, feasting around your table. And we thank you for this great gift of the Sabbath that you have given and made for us. Please help us to come to you humbly, joyfully, and with festive hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.